The Children of the Sky by Vernor Vinge. So I just finished this one up, and this completes the Zones of Thought trilogy for me. The Zones of Thought in publication order goes A Fire Upon the Deep, A Deepness in the Sky, and then finally The Children of the Sky. And A Deepness in the Sky can kind of be read out of order. It could be read by itself, in my opinion. And it kind of is a prequel to the original story, A Fire Upon the Deep. Now, The Children of the Sky is a direct sequel to this book. So if you've read this book and you finished it up and you like what you read, you like this world of the Tines and everything that was going on, and you're kind of curious to see what was going to happen next, then this is where you would go next. Now, this book was copyright 2011. And I've tried to think of a way to do this video without spoiling A Fire Upon the Deep, but I couldn't figure out a way to do it. So what I would say is, if you haven't read A Fire Upon the Deep and you ever think you're going to, then I wouldn't watch this video now. You can save it for in your watch later and come back after you've read A Fire Upon the Deep. Because there's just a couple things that are almost unavoidable that I have to mention that will spoil the ending of that book. And in my opinion, it was my favorite book of the three. If someone came up to me and said, I just want to read one of these books, obviously I think most people would say, read A Fire Upon the Deep. You could just read A Deepness in the Sky, but you might not have the whole, the experience and the understanding of what Vinge did with these zones of thought. Because A Fire Upon the Deep and this book is really kind of in that realm where he's actually talking about the zones of thought and what it means to be in these different zones. Now you can go back to my video of my review of A Fire Upon the Deep. I tried to explain how the zones worked, and I also kind of talked about the setup of that novel. So I'm not going to really go back into that again. I'm just going to start us off. I'm going to, right now, so this is about the time in the video, I'm going to spoil the ending, because that's kind of the setup of where we find ourselves in the beginning of The Children of the Sky. So at the end of that book, there was this big threat of the Blight, and there was kind of a civil war going on the Tines world with these alien creatures, these pack-like dog kind of animals called the Tines. I also described them a lot more in depth in that video. And in the end, Pham, who was one of these very interesting, unique characters, he's kind of hard to explain, but he ended up defeating the Blight. And in doing so, he actually moved the zones in order to take out the Blight. And it worked, but it also, took out trillions of people, took out complete worlds. I mean, massive devastation, but in his mind, it was better than letting this Blight take over the whole universe or galaxy eventually. So in the end, he kind of sacrificed himself to do that, and it was a really good ending. It was kind of bittersweet. But what we're left with is the remnants of this kind of civil war. There's still some Tines that maybe aren't into these humans on their planet. There's a new introduction of a whole nother character who kind of is starting an industrial revolution on the planet. Plays a really big role. But what happens is, we had Ravna, who was one of the main characters who came from this relay with Pham to come try to save, the whole galaxy. And she's left to kind of deal with the aftermath of everything that happened in A Fire Upon the Deep. And we also have these two main characters, this brother and sister, who were part of the the high lab out at Stromley Realm, or however you pronounce that. And in A Fire Upon the Deep, each one of them was separated, and they kind of didn't know each other were alive, and they were taken by different packs, and it kind of played a part in this like civil war between some of these Tynes. So everyone kind of got reunited. We have Ravna, we have these twins, we have a bunch of children who were in cold sleep on this ship, and they've been awoken. Most all of them have been awoken, and they don't really have much experience of what happened. And so they're all kind of trying to figure out what their future is. They're kind of stuck on this planet, and it appears that this blight is still coming towards them. It's 30 light years out, and since the zones were moved, it could take them a long time to get there, or the zones could shift again. No one really knows what's going on, so they decide they need to start preparing for this inevitable blight to come down to the Tynes world and, you know, seek revenge for what Fam did to them. That's kind of the setup, and in the book you have some really interesting dynamics, because these children, they were just told this. So you almost get a faction of these children that almost think that this is some sort of conspiracy theory, that it really didn't happen. And so that kind of starts sowing some seeds of discontent, I guess, amongst some of these children and some of these key players. You've got some leftovers from the villainous Tyne group. You have the people that kind of helped Fam and Ravna save everybody. And you have this new guy. His name is not, I'm on the tip of my tongue, but he's kind of starting this whole industrial revolution. And so this book, originally I didn't think it was that long, but it happens to be 670 some pages. It's a big one. That's really what this book is about. And I'll get into the pros and cons later. I almost went into that right now, but there is some very interesting things that goes on with the Tynes. You get to learn a lot more about these Tyne creatures and their pack mentality, and how they can lose members or take on members, and how it slightly changes the dynamic of the entity that they fall under, because they usually just call them by one name as the group, but then they have like individual members, and together they form this kind of, pack mind, I guess. And so you get a lot of that. There's a lot of time spent just down on the ground on this planet with these aliens, with these humans, just trying to not only prepare for this inevitable blight return, but also going through almost another civil war amongst all kinds of different dynamics between everything that I described. So I kind of want to leave it there. This was probably my least favorite of all the books. It's still very ambitious. Vernor Vinge's writing is amazing. The creative idea of these Tynes and everything that goes on with them was really good. I still wonder how these dogs are able to build castles, but that was never really explained. But this book does have some very long sections that took me a lot. It was kind of a struggle to get through. Once again, I'm happy I read it. I don't regret spending time reading this book, but just so you know, there is some long slowdowns in the middle of this book. There is one more thing that I kind of want to talk about, and this is probably in the spoiler light territory for this book in particular. I already spoiled Fire Upon the Deep, I was trying to leave this spoiler free, but you kind of have two plot lines going. You have this blight coming, and you have everything that's going on the planet. Well, one of these is wrapped up in a really awesome way. I'm not going to tell you which one. And as you get towards the end of the book, towards the very end. There's some really cool events. I really enjoyed that part of it. There was just the way it was panned out and everything happened. It was very unpredictable. I really enjoyed how that whole plot line was wrapped up, and it was very satisfying. But then the other plot line, nothing. You don't get really any resolution on that. And I'm going to post a video down below. I figured there was definitely people that had this same beef, and I found a couple people mentioning this. But when I looked on YouTube, I found a video where Vernor Vinge was invited to speak at Google, and it appears he had like a really long-time friend who worked at Google, and he invited him in. He's kind of speaking in front of a group of maybe like 40 people. And the title of the video is Children of the Sky. But really, the discussion revolves all about Vernor's writing and his history as a professor at the University of San Diego, and his interest in computer programming, and how many, ideas he coined and terms he coined. But there are some, in the Q&A section, there is some spoilers. I wouldn't watch that video if you don't want to be spoiled on this book. But in the Q&A section, someone point blank kind of asks him about that. And Vernor says in there that, yeah, he understands this is probably the biggest criticism that he's received from this. And he says that it would probably take 2 more novels to completely wrap up the whole idea. And apparently he wrote a short story. I forget the exact name of it, but his idea was to write 2 more novels that would take us from the end of this book, The Children in the Sky, all the way up to this short story he wrote. So this video is 11 years old. I'm not sure if Vernor's still writing. I don't know if we'll ever get all of that story told, but it's just kind of interesting. So if you have some time, you can watch that. It really just showcases what a smart guy Vernor is, and influential. Seems like a really nice guy. The way he's just interacting with the whole crowd and everything. It is a pretty cool video. So if you get a chance, you can go watch that, but be careful, like I said, it might spoil it. So that's all I'm going to say there. There's a few other booktubers who we've all kind of been reading some of these books recently, and we might try to do a collaboration video where we talk about the whole trilogy as a whole. So I'm not exactly sure when that would happen. It's kind of hard to coordinate time sometimes, but maybe be on the lookout for that in the future. And up next, I'm going to read Dorsai by Gordon R. Dickson. So look for that video coming out soon, and thanks again for watching.